found the crown of YouTube movie reviewers lying in the gutter, and I picked it up and placed it upon my own head. Welcome to my review of the film Napoleon, directed by Ridley Scott and starring Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby. Joaquin Phoenix stars as Napoleon Bonaparte, the Emperor of France, hosts the French Revolution. Vanessa Kirby stars as Empress Josephine, Napoleon's wife in Napoleon. And this film is directed by Ridley Scott, who's given us such films as Gladiator and most recently gave us such films as House of Gucci, The Last Duel, and The Martian. This film follows Napoleon's rise to power in France and his inevitable downfall. It is a film that explores who Napoleon is as a military leader and as a husband, especially with his complicated relationship that he had with Empress Josephine. Ridley Scott has the challenge within Napoleon to craft a story that does the entire history of Napoleon. We start this movie and it is at Marie Antoinette's beheading, and Napoleon is in the crowd, and it is a clear representation that Napoleon understands the consequences of essentially a failed coup and a failed grab of leadership. If he does not have full support, if anything goes wrong, the price of his betrayal, anything that he does, the cost of failure will be his death. And that is the stakes in Napoleon. We are watching this character of Napoleon rise quite literally from the gutter and claim himself Emperor of France through his conquest. And Napoleon's conquests are legendary as they are horrifying. The trail of people he left dead are in the hundreds of thousands. Napoleon was a conqueror, he was a bloodthirsty man, and he was an extremely complicated man, especially in his relationship with Josephine. Ridley Scott, the director of the film, presents the thesis of this film as such. Napoleon conquered the world because he could never sexually please his wife, Josephine, and he could not bear himself an heir. That is what the film is exploring. And this film does focus on the sexual relationship between Napoleon and Josephine. That is not what the entire aspect of this film is about. When we are with the character of Josephine, that does feel like that is the majority of what is being discussed. This struggle between not being able to produce an heir and Napoleon's just quite honestly bad sexual skills. The films portray Napoleon as quite inept. He's this incredible military leader. He revolutionizes strategies seen in war. He takes and grabs whatever he can. He makes the world his own, basically. In Europe, he is in control of most of Europe. And yet, when he comes home, he's this shy little sad guy who really you can tell just doesn't have any romance in him. He's just so pathetic and just almost cartoonishly stupid in some of these scenes with his wife. It is a really funny performance from Joaquin Phoenix that he's giving as Napoleon Bonaparte. And the scenes that work so well in this movie are when we juxtapose Napoleon as we know him on the battlefield versus Napoleon at home, unable to sexually please his wife. And that is a real huge aspect of the story. Obviously, with the idea of the Napoleon complex, they do discuss who Napoleon is and some of the things that he struggled with and what made him tick. In Napoleon, we see Bonaparte as a man who isn't always in control and how much that frustrates and angers him. There are scenes where you can just clearly tell he wants to conquer the same way he conquers on the battlefield, but he can't do that in his marriage. He can't do that with his personal relationships. And thus he grows angry and he takes out that anger on the battlefield. Napoleon is a very angry man in this movie, and for much of it, it is played for comedic laughs. Vanessa Kirby does get the short end of the stick in this film. You can clearly tell, as Ridley Scott has said, that there is a 4 hour cut of this movie. And I believe that that 4 hour cut probably has a lot more of Josephine. In this version of the film, we have Vanessa Kirby essentially being the object of affection for Napoleon in it. And it doesn't feel like she is herself an incredibly strong, compelling character. Outside of that, even though the character of Josephine in history is one of the most interesting characters, and her relationship to Napoleon, especially in the later aspects of his life near his downfall, there is a turbulent web of lies and deceit that goes in there that this film doesn't do any justice to. And you can see it touch on certain aspects, but it's very brief, it's very quick, and you don't really get the full impact of this movie. And that's where the struggle of this movie is. At 2 hours and 40 minutes, it is both too short to tell the entire story of Napoleon, but it is also far too long in sequences where you really do feel the run time of this film, especially in the last hour of this film. Overall, I think this film is a success, largely due to the historical set pieces that Ridley Scott designs. At 85 years old, he is still an incredible director of action. There are a few historical battles in here that are very famous, whether it's Napoleon's march into Russia, whether it is Waterloo, some of his early conquests that are just staged beautifully. And it's some of the best combat you'll see in a movie ever. And there's an incredible central performance here with Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon, but it doesn't always amount to much, and it's a bit frustrating. So when I say go see this movie, I do encourage people to see this movie because I do believe it to be good. However, I also am aware that there is a 4 hour cut of this movie, and there's this part of me that almost just wants to say, wait until that and see that film, because that's the version of this movie that you probably want to see, because this movie is missing a lot of the nitty gritty details that I believe would make this movie go from good to great. Right now, I believe Napoleon to be a good movie, not a great movie. Thus, I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars here from the Beneverse Movie Channel. If you like this video all, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for more. Take care. See you. Bye bye.